what caused you to write this book? I mean, what was brought you guys together to do this?
For me, it was.
Are we recording? We're good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Are we recording now?
Oh.
So let's just.
Now we're just riffing.
Capacity has always been a big conversation. Lately, or probably for our firm, having to deal with capacity. And I'm like, and I've written some capacity stuff for Ian's company, Carbon. And so I said, hey, Ian, I want to write a book on capacity. I'll do it with Carbon. But it was a lighter book or something. I don't know.
It was an ebook.
Or something. And you're like, dude, I'm thinking about writing a book too.
So it went from like this little, let's just do this 50-page.
And it was about capacity. That's what we're going to first write about.
Yeah, I mean, because I'm an industrial engineer by trade. So because of that, I think and breathe capacity planning, that type of stuff. And I wanted to go something back to a little bit of the roots that I had done, 30-something years ago. And the accounting industry is really interesting in terms of how do you plan for capacity? It's really complicated.
Right.
So I had been looking to write a book, and I was trying to figure out who I might write it with because I didn't feel comfortable just doing it by myself. I wanted to be able to marry my technical understanding and how I view the world with practical understanding.
Right.
And so we had this weird conversation where you're like, yeah, so what are you thinking about writing a book? I'm like, yeah, I'm thinking about writing a book. What about you? Yeah, I'm thinking about writing a book too. And then we went back and forth like, well, maybe we should write it together. And then we're like, well, I don't know. And then it was like my wife who, she's like, I don't know if we're dating. I'll meet you on a Thursday night. So she had an out and you're like, well, maybe we'll meet in a month. Let's just think about it. And I was like, man, he's playing hard to get. What's up with that? What did I know?
I love that. So Carbon, what does Carbon do?
Carbon's practice management for accounting firms specifically. So vertical SaaS practice management software. So it manages all the things a company needs to perform. So it's the operating system, so nervous system. And in that, we're managing how work gets done, essentially. And so in that, we get asked a lot in terms of capacity planning. How do I know how to do my jobs for a given week, a given month, and then further out? And we've always strive to accomplish doing planning all the way out to that sort of year-long mark, but we haven't gotten there yet. We're getting there. And part of the book was the theoretical exercise of could I understand holistically how that would work, because I've had to talk about it over time, but I haven't actually written it down.
Right.
And so that chapter 11 was really trying to put all that logic down into play on a human-based organization, because it's very different than in manufacturing. Because I've done it in manufacturing, but I haven't necessarily written that out for an accountancy or a marketing agency or so forth.
Yeah, and the way that this book is broken down, you can sense your engineering background. Because there's and it's in the best possible way. This book goes far beyond just theory into some actual practical things that you can apply as a firm owner today, which I think is incredible.
Yeah. Well, I think that goes back to Jason's. When you talk about coming together, his glasses are round, mine are more square, right? So right brain, left brain, however you want to think about it. But Jason, his superpower is that he's worked with firms for almost probably over 3 decades, and so he's been on the ground floor having to coach. And understand their pains and be in the moment, have the empathy, where I've observed it and measured it and done research on it. And I meet with firms across the globe at scale. And I'm dissecting it from more of an engineering analytical perspective. Yeah. And I think that's why the book works really well, is very complementary skill sets.
Yeah. Well, and it's because sometimes you would come up with a model. I'm like, doesn't work in practice. They're not going to click that box or do that thing. They're going to get pissed and cry and run home. And so then the model doesn't work as well.
Yeah.
And so
it's got to be good and something that people actually
So it's got to be a model. And then part of the book was to say, this is hard. It doesn't work like that. Even the back of the book where we say, hey, you can hire us. It says you need to tweak this and make it your own.
Right.
Yeah. We didn't want to write a book where we said we've figured it out, because we haven't figured it out. No. We hope this helps you. Yeah. But it's going to look different for everybody that actually reads the book. And when we came together, Ian brought so much analytical research, just tons and tons of research. So we had data, and then we had interviews. Ian knows how to run interviews. So I learned a lot about that process. And I was just writing from, Julie and I, we coach people, 6, 8 firms every week.
Right.
We're just up at bat, coaching, building our
probably
own company.
So many trends.
We just see people, they're crying, they're hurting, they're excited, and we're just working through every bit of that. So I have so much of the just personal work through that. And when we married it with the data and the analytics, it was pretty mind blowing. I think
it was cool because when we first started doing the book, I flew out to Greenville to see Jason, and our whole idea was, let's talk through what maybe the book content might be, and let's put our hypotheses down of what we think the content should be. What do we think should be the structure, the thoughts, like what are firms struggling with, and how they accomplish it. And it was actually quite surprising because I came from a very research analytic. You came from in practice, and they actually married up quite well.
Wow.
And then when we used that in order for the research to do all of the interview guides and whatnot, because you need to have the hypothesis to try to test against, and then do the interviews to understand where you missed it. And obviously we learned a lot because we adjusted what we did based on what we saw from all the interviews. But the core thesis was maintained, and we both had the same sort of viewpoint on it, which I thought was pretty cool.
Yeah, it was cool.
That's amazing.
And as we wrote it, we could verify it through interviews.
Yeah.
Because Ian ran two main levels of interviews.
He's like, why are we doing all these interviews? I was like, we're not putting out a book unless it's validated by fact. And he's like, after the first, I think it was 50, you're like, don't you think we have enough? I'm like, no,
man.
No, that's the first pass, man.
Yeah, then you wanted to do a second pass, and I'm like, God,
do we have to do another one? Yeah.
And he's like, you have to validate everything you wrote about in the first. And turns out that's how you do it.
Yeah.
And so everything we learned and we wrote about, we could verify it all through the second pass of interviews.
Yeah.
I've never done a process like that. Right. Ian has done that multiple times. So that I learned tons through that.
There's a lot of gut in the beginning, right?
Yeah.
Right.
And then you have the analysis that validates it.
Yeah.
It was cool, which we did after the second pass. We did towards the end. We did go tweak a few things, and go, okay, we need to adjust this. And a lot of the percentages and the 50% of firms do this.
Right.
We pulled a lot of that from that second pass,
because
it was validating all of the things.
We used the long-standing longitudinal study that we had. We started at Thrival Deeper Weekend 8 years ago. And so we had this rich data set that we used for that to kind of give the basis of the information.
Right.
But then when we built the hypotheses, then we did a small subsample of the interviews. We did about 12 to validate was roughly on point. Then we did 50. And then we essentially we rewrote that sort of screener, did another 50, and then we did another 50. And then we had conversations that went ongoing after that. But then that was a qualitative study. And then we needed to do a quantitative. So we did a quantitative study just before the book was finished. And that's where a lot of those facts and stats came in that were, reaffirming kind of what we were told.
Yeah.
Which
makes a book that you can stand behind now. It's actually going to help people.
That's what we wanted to do.
That was the whole goal.
Yeah. So the book is Scaling with Purpose, and it helps people scale with purpose. What's the who's the target? Who's the people that this book's trying to help, and what's their problem, the issue that they're facing right now?
What sets the book apart from other, because there's a lot of great books on scaling.
Yeah.
A lot of great books on scaling. A lot of them have to be general and broad enough to apply to a lot of different types of companies. Right. Ian and I have worked really specifically with service-based entrepreneurs. So, the subtitle of the book is the Service Entrepreneur's Guide to Intentional Growth. And Service Entrepreneur, we take a little bit of time to explain that in the book. It is for typically people who were technical in some sense,
right.
Technical design, technical accounting, technical legal, architectural. They become scalers. They become business operators that then have to scale. And then they sell technical services, which is knowledge-based deliverables, and turn those into revenue. And they have to do it through also technical people that they hire that have to be technically foundationally good, but also have to operate inside of the capacity of the culture of a company. And turns out that's pretty super hard to do.
Oh, man.
It's hard. So we're going to write a book for those people.
Yeah.
And, just embedded in that, we found that it's a lot of technical founders. They don't know to design their company. And that's a big foundational point in the book. If you want to scale your company and you're a technical founder, you turn knowledge deliverables into money.
Right.
You have to intentionally design it, and you'll see you have to do it at stages.
Right.
You have to do it at different team sizes, revenue sizes. Those are kind of things. So it really it counters people that think, cool, everything's humming, and we don't want to say just you wait,
Yeah.
But we do want to say, watch out. There's always a growth plateau.
Yeah.
And it's the way it's meant to be. You have to break through that. Yep. Sometimes you do it with debt. Sometimes you do it with a restructure of people. Sometimes new thought. Sometimes new leadership in bigger companies like Ian's. You have to replace even some of the executives. You go through that process to break those ceilings. So that's really who it was for, and to teach them how to be scalers. You're a technical person.
Which is a completely different skill set. I mean, no one gets in to be like, hey, you know what? I need to figure out melt scores and all these acronyms and stuff. Like no one even thinks about that.
We don't know.
We're like, I like to do this. I'm going to do it.
I think to build on that, when we had done the original hypothesis of the book, we were trying to write on capacity planning. And I think the big aha was you can talk about capacity planning and you can try to strive for doing it, but if you're organizationally not set up for success on that, it's all not going to come to bear.
Right.
And in the research and whatnot, it was just that understanding of organizational strategy and design was so critical for everything else as you moved from going from a 1 to 5 to 8 to 12 to 16 to 20 and beyond. That sort of thoughtfulness was really key, which is actually why we got to the book name of Scale with Purpose, which was, it was originally supposed to be a capacity planning book. And then the first half of the book became everything but capacity planning because you couldn't get there unless you had really had that mindfulness about how to be able to transition through that. And that was really unique from the service audience, the service organizations. And when we, I was skeptical to be able to understand, well, does a legal firm, an accounting firm, a creative agency, design agency, do they operate the same? And the patterns were all the same. The numbers shift around a little bit, but the patterns were exactly the same. And it really comes back to what you said, that technical founder. And again, we saw it in the practice excellence data that we captured and looked at, which was we're not good at management. That's just not a core competency. You haven't had to do it. And so now you're in this position of leadership and you're trying to figure out those answers. And, those, for any entrepreneur, any founder, that's a very hard point in time. Yeah. It was for me. I know it was for you.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know about you, Will, but it's probably the same.
Oh, yeah. It's a daily struggle sometimes.
Oh, yeah. A daily struggle.
And many people, myself included, start a company because they're unemployable.
Right.
Exactly. And so they're like, well, I know one's going to hire me, so I might as well just start my own thing. And it's such a hard thing when you don't have even a company that it's been able to be modeled to you. But many times those companies that you're in, they're not necessarily doing it right, or they may be a different kind of structure. Yeah. And so you're thinking, well, I can take those principles and apply to this, doesn't fit. You get round peg and square hole and all that sort of thing. Yeah. The there's a lot of books on scaling service-based businesses, thought leadership, all of the buzzwords that you could possibly think of for businesses. What's the hole that you discovered that the market didn't have? You're like, man, there's a place and a bookshelf for this book in particular.
I mean, from my perspective, I didn't think there was something that either took the theory and provided the practical understanding of how to go from one side of that to the other. Usually it's around, here's my 5 principles or 7 actions that you should do, and you should just put these in place. Well, why? Why does that need to be put in place? Or here's the sort of more academic side of this, and you need to now understand that and then apply whatever you think needs to happen in order to make that work for yourself.
Right.
So we wanted to bridge between the two sides of that, which was something with really hard factual information, but then also provide the recipes of how you can actually put this in place, knowing that everyone's journey is going to be different. You can't say that, your particular business will, at 12 people, you're going to have this problem. We don't know, but it's going to happen within this sort of size parameter, because we can see that. And so it's allowing for there to be enough detail, fact, and specificity.
Yeah.
Would you agree with that?
Yeah. Yeah, and we're really business owners. Ian and I just own businesses. So, we're we're trying to help people that also do the same thing. So it's not theoretical in that we're just consultants.
Yeah.
We had to write a book from our own experience. We still actively run our businesses, multiple businesses, and have been through all of the ups and downs. Actually, there's a lot of our stories in there where we drove off the cliff, we drove in ditches a lot, and other people pulled us out of the ditches. Yeah. But I think the whole it does feel is it does give the theory and a lot of the practice. We also want, you can get resources on our website, scalewithpurpose.info. You can get resources, you can get spreadsheets. And then we can say, do you need more help? You can consult with us, because that's what we do for a living anyway. So we want to help people do that. So there's practical, but it's also saying you can get a lot more from the book. Now it's a foundation you can try to build on. And when you still break something, which you will, let's tweak our resources and our model and in our consulting and really help restructure your specific company.
And I think to build on that is, one of the reasons for writing the book and why now is, you look at your career, you don't necessarily have a charted course. It just kind of takes its own course, right? And and the same applies for you. I get the pleasure of meeting with thousands and thousands of firms on a given year, just for what we do as a business. And I'm on the road a lot, and it was like I'm looking at all these patterns, and that's my superpower. Is I'm able to look at things in aggregate and then kind of simplify it. And so because of that seat on the bus, I wanted to give back. Like, this is why when someone asks me a question, why do I know the answer? Well, I'm recalling the thousands of other conversations I've had. And Jason has the same thing. We just have two different perspectives on that. Yeah. And that's why I think the book works.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so well rounded, and not just as a firm owner, who does service based business that work with carbon based entities that put out stuff, and it's just like the amount of practical things you can take and apply to your business today is just incredible. So nice. As you get into the book, as people will find, it gets deeper and deeper into that, and it's great. I think you can take what applies to you and start changing your firm today. Yeah. So purpose, that's an interesting word. As you guys start the book, it's kind of a it's weed through the head trash. Yeah. It's kind of like a kick in the pants, and there's some tough love in there of like, do you want what this means? Shout out to Julie. That's a great saying that I say to this day. But why was purpose? Why is that an important thing? Because you guys talk about purpose, what mission, values, vision. Why is purpose important?
Intention. Yeah, it's that's the foundation, and it's probably something Ian and I have learned in our own story. You do start probably without purpose when you start your company. You're like, I'm gonna go start my own company. That's about it. Right. There's the mission.
When you hit the unemployable mark,
right? You hit the unemployable mark. And the first business I did, I showed my wife my spreadsheet, and the sales just shot up. She's like, I don't know. That one,
but it's in the spreadsheet.
Yeah, it's in the spreadsheet.
That's reality once you do that.
That one went in the toilet. I had to pay off debt, and anyway, you go through that, and you go, I need to kind of think through why I'm doing this. And most people aren't, and they don't. Yeah. And it's probably okay, because none of us would start companies if we really sat down and thought about it. We need that entrepreneurial vigor to push us into this unknown place, not knowing how hard it is, or who would do it. Yep. And so, but we found to scale a service organization, it has to be intentional. We tell people you can't grow accidentally. Yep. That doesn't work. If you're not purposely and intentionally designing at various stages, you will hit some walls. It's just because of the model of the company. It's not that you're a bad leader. It's that this model, a service-based model based on technical deliverables, hits certain walls. And if the technical founder does not abandon some of their technical expertise, which a lot of fight, in coaching, they'll fight with us about it. Yeah. I'm not going to give up the fact that I have this expertise. It's like, I don't know what to tell you. This company will demand a leader show up that intentionally scales and organizes the company to scale. And you will give up the technical abilities you have. Pretty hard for a technical founder to do. So they all don't know, We like to tell people, running a business that delivers tax returns is much harder than doing tax returns, right? They're completely two different things,
right? Two different skill sets, two different types of people.
So it's got to be done on purpose,
right?
And so, and we just run our companies with purpose, mission, the values, the reason we do it, our people, our culture, really matters.
Well, there was a couple things in the. First is for anyone that is an entrepreneur or walks into it, you have to be insane. So you don't realize that till you get into it and you're like, what the heck have I done?
Right. I try to actively dissuade people from trying businesses.
It's like, and you can't get out of it. Now you're even more unemployable. Right. So now you're kind of have to go down that path. But, one of the things that was really shocking as we did the interviews was and I thought, we had seen the data where it was like, it's not a linear line of success. It was kind of lumpy. It went up and down. So there was suspicions during that about the difficulty, right? Mm-hmm. But then we went through that first wave of interviews, if you remember, and it was like person after person after person. They're like, yeah, so I was doing really good. I had about 8 people. Things were grand. Profit was good. Everything was comfortable. And then I got to like 14, 16 people, and then everything went to crap. And then I went backwards to 12 or 8, and then I got grounded, and then I was able to go through again. And I was able to get this aha moment, and then I went through and I was able to be successful. Or they're like, screw that, I'm not going to do it again. Like I got to this point, I'm just going to sit back and relax at a smaller amount. And it dawned on us, it was probably maybe the 18th or 20th interview, Jennifer Green, she started to articulate where she was at. She was in that period around, I think she was around 12 employees at that point. Yeah. And she's like, I would go to sleep at night and I wouldn't know what the business was. And I wasn't comfortable with where the deliverables at. I'm looking at our quality and it's not what I would expect. I don't know what client is asking for, where the deliverables are at. I don't know what this team member's working on. I'm worried about this next person possibly quitting. Yeah. I feel like, as she put it, the business I built, it didn't feel familiar anymore. Yeah. And
that's a horrible feeling.
It's an awful feeling.
Yeah.
It really
is.
And
it was an emotional call. And it was one of those ones where you sit back and you're like, wow, she just articulated what we have already been seeing in this conversation. And she was the one that was able to put her finger on the pulse and just say, look, this business isn't like it was before. Yeah. There is something fundamentally different that I haven't been able to solve. And then we went and in the conversations, it turned out it was 5% of the audience was able to blow through this, but it came because they were very intentional about how they were approaching the problem and what the patterns they put in place. And that was kind of seeing the reality of most entrepreneurs, myself included, yourself, probably you too, Will. Sure. And then the very few that really had the right recipe, and it came back to purpose. And in the back of the book, we'll talk later probably about Chad a little bit. Chad, was able to crystallize that as well, saying, look, the purpose is what you built the business for and what you're trying to deliver. And that goes back to the vision, your aspirational, where you want to end up being with that over time, your mission, which is the practical sort of, stretch goal that you're going to do tactically to get there. And then it has to be grounded again on those values, which we've always heard that. What's your why? Vision, mission, values. Yeah. But in order to scale, you have to have that intentionality and all those things in place to be able to be true to yourself and be true to your firm.
Yeah. And, Jennifer at Jade Consulting and her partner, Michelle, in Canada, they're amazing business owners. Right.
Yeah, they're smart. They're smart. They're super smart.
Yeah. They're great scalers, so they're already good at it. So when people that have the ability to just run a really good business run into some things, it's a lot of mental work you have to do as an owner, because you start looking in the mirror going, I'm not made for this, or I don't know what I'm doing, or why can I not ever hire anybody appropriately? Which is because, service-based companies, team, investing in team, that's the hardest thing, right? Capacity is because capacity conversations are in the book because humans are in our businesses. Yep. That's why.
Including the owners.
Exactly. Right. So probably the most disruptive of anybody in the business.
So the first part of the book, like you said, the book gets more technical in the middle towards the later parts of the book. The first part is really to go, hey, you're a leader, so we're going to work through your head first.
Right.
You know what you got into? Do you realize what you got into? This is not an easy business. And purpose and intention has a lot to do with saying, we don't want you to be fooled and think you stepped into something you can just blow through. This kind of business does not work that way. And I think a lot of us don't view it. Sometimes I'll say it's more complicated than people treat it. The management of capacity. And we say there's more you don't know than you do know. And that's not a good place to be in. So even great business owners, like the people we interviewed, like Jennifer and Michelle in Jade Consulting, still run into the same things everybody runs into. So we got to talk to them like leaders. And it's like, here's what a leader has to do. You have to push through those walls. Here's a book. We're going to give you some resources. It is going to bring clarity to the things that are unknown in this kind of work.
What do you say to the founder who has 6 employees? They're starting to maybe hit that 600,000 mark. I don't know what that number is. They're starting to make some money. They're seeing some success. They see, okay, I need to start adding some more employees to it. They've read the book and they're like, oh crap. Ian has said that I need to make this, purpose and get this whole thing going. Where do they start to even find their purpose? And maybe they have their missions, maybe they have their vision, maybe, pieces of it. What's the first step for someone that hasn't yet hit the buzzsaw, of that first level?
Well, I think this goes back to, who's the book for? And again, we went back and forth on this. Was it for the businesses in the 8 to 20? Was it for the businesses in that 1 to 8? And so there was different reasons for different audiences. That particular one from the 1 to 8 6-person firm, the book's really to give you awareness, like what the heck is coming at you, right? Like
get ready.
Yeah, get ready.
Get ready.
As you like to say, buckle up.
Buckle up.
Buckle up. Put your helmet on.
Buckle up, baby.
And I think for them, it's really understanding, like taking inventory. Like where are you in your level of sophistication of the business? We did in that same pairing. We talked about Jennifer Crean. We also talked about Mary, and they were at that 8 point. And what was fascinating with them is a lot of firms will use EOS as a mechanism, and they at that point said, "Hey, let's just take a step back. Let's look at the business holistically, and let's figure out where everybody's seat is on the bus, and who is going to be the right people in the right spots." In order for this particular business to be able to transform itself. Do we have the right people? Do we have the right processes? And that's where that inventory, in my opinion, is what's going to set them up for the best chance of success. Because if you don't take a step back, because at that stage, we all were on that same stage. Things are going good. You just double down on what's working. But you actually don't take a thoughtful approach and understand kind of, well, where are my blind spots? And that in the book, in my opinion, and what I was hoping for it to be for folks when they read it is allow for you to have the ability to catalog that.
And some of the first parts of the book, talk about that mission and it's hard when you're at 6 people, things are humming. And probably at that stage you're making pretty good profit. And a lot of times the owner takes, too much money out of the business because it's there. I did that. And it's there and you're like, wow, I know what I'm doing.
Right.
Boy, I'm pretty good at this. Driving towards the wall, and it feels like you're not doing work if you sit down and you establish a purpose and core values, and that feels like fluffy stuff.
Like you're creating a structure for a very tiny team that doesn't really need it.
Right. It's like you want me to have, right now we have weekly team meetings, with our team of 15 and go through our core values, and that's just weird if you have 3 people. It's like, so Bob, what's the core value you like? And John, how do you feel? And they're like, we're done. It took 5 minutes. It feels like it's not foundational, so it's not something to work on. But if you don't build the reason why you're doing it, when you hit the wall, and we all do, we're not saying that's bad. We're saying we all hit growth ceilings in this kind of business. You got to come back to your purpose. You got to go, why am I doing this? Because you'll ask yourself that, 3 a.m., that's, boy,
the witching hour.
Why is it the witching hour? It's like, what am I doing?
Hot sweats, waking up in the middle of the night.
I could be an engineer.
I could be an engineer. And you say crazy things. Like I said on a podcast that Julie, my new partner at the time, heard. I just want to cut grass. She had just become my partner.
Oh, wow.
And heard it on a podcast.
Fun.
We had some conversations after that.
I bet.
She's like, what did I sign up for?
Yeah.
And I was just going through my growth ceilings, you know, turns out. But your core values and your purpose, you will lean on that. And then that will create your culture, 8 to 15.
Yeah.
Then you have people soaking in a culture, and culture brings an adherence to people so that now your team lean in and commit to. And what do they commit to? It has to be a purpose and core values and mission. They have to be taught that. So when their life gets hard, which it will,
right,
then they have to lean in and commit to and go, committing to our work for this company is worth it.
Yeah.
And they have to be told it's worth it by the founder.
And
but if the founder's, crying in the back room, they have to dry their tears, come out and go, it's worth it, guys.
Right, yeah, exactly. And if you have a team that agrees to these 4 things of having that purpose, mission, vision, values, from what I read in the book, it's okay. We've agreed to this. We've all signed up for it.
Yeah.
We all want to be a part of this.
Yeah.
And when the crap hits the fan, which it will
too,
right,
right,
as you hit ceilings and walls and all those sort of things, then you go like, okay, we have a common purpose. We know in the fog of war, these are the reasons. This is our why and what we're going to be doing.
I think there's 2 things to realize that, and I think where most people forget is that when you hit that scaling plateau, it's because you're having to create a management structure. You're hiring your first employee that you're delegating authority to, that you have to trust.
Right. And
the mission, purpose, vision, values, all of that becomes the foundation that they're able to operate from. They understand kind of the rule book for the firm overall. I think most people, they go, this feels like fluff at this stage, but it's the guardrails by how to operate once you have those sort of layerings that will occur. And it doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be amazing at that first. You will evolve it. We're now well over 300 people, and we're looking at we redo those. We look at them every year, and we probably retweak them every 2. And so it's not going to be right. It's a living breathing thing, just like the business is. And so, but you have to understand that next person you bring in that's going to sit by your side that wasn't there from day one, they can go all sorts of directions, right? Yeah. And so you want to have the truth of the matter of what that team has built and what's core to how they operate.
Yeah. I love that.
Good stuff.
You guys have great models in this book, and so many. The first one that you introduced in that first chapter is the entrepreneur's mindset matrix. So there's these different types of entrepreneurs and kind of what their mindset is. What are those 3 mindsets that y'all outline in the book?
Yeah. So this came from. I've been doing research now for 25 years. Holy wow. Well, I've been doing longer than that, but I've been doing institutionalized research for 25 years. And I had run 2 really large studies back in the 2000s and the 2010s for 2 different companies. And we surveyed large sample size of small businesses. And when we looked at the data, we're like, wow. And you've seen this, and we've talked about it when we're on the road. If you ask somebody, again, I do technology, and we say, hey, we're going to give you time back to your business. And you say, oh, you can grow. Well, some people go like, I don't want to grow. I just want to hang out with my kids, watch a soccer game, coach, whatever it might be. And everyone has a different thing they're going to do, but they all kind of fall into patterns. And so those patterns kind of, they sort of dictated these particular tracks. And so, that's where we had, the classic entrepreneurship one, right? But then we had, again, those that are satisfied. And then we had the lifestyle as well. Yeah. And so, people fell into different ones, but they don't have the same sort of pathways. And so we talk about type 1, type 2, type 3. And for type 1, it's really a business of fun and passion. That's where you go the hobbyist and simple by design, right? And so, you might start off doing a side gig, and that side gig starts to make a little bit of money. And, you now are in the situation where you're like, I'm having kind of fun with this. Yep. And you don't have intentions to scale it. It's just something that you have the energy and the emotion around it. Those people generally, they have high satisfaction because it's usually around something they love. Yeah. But they have low aspirations for it to grow. If it grows, we'll talk about Gary Wood later. His whole comment was unintentional growth, and that's what they're looking for. Yeah. But if you're if you're in the second camp, which is, so that was the satisfied camp. If you're in the next one,
it's the calculated,
which is the calculated, Now this is the type of entrepreneur I wish I was in some regards, which was I see the goalpost and then I go to the next one and I go to the next one. And there's this thoughtfulness that goes through it, and there's this understanding of predictability and not necessarily as much risk taking. And they will ultimately grow the business methodically over time, but it won't be this sort of large scaling business. It's all step functions, right? And they're very methodical how to get there. And they may grow to bigger ones, but they generally stay smaller. And then you get the entrepreneurs, which is us three, all messy.
Turn it up to 11.
Turn it up to
Let's just break this sucker.
You do it, Jason. You build a spreadsheet,
right?
And the numbers look great on the spreadsheet, right?
Awesome.
And it either was well thought out and right on point, which is the small minority, or it's going to be chaos.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because we talked through the book, and you mentioned it in terms of, hey, what's this type 4?
Yeah.
And so type 3 was the entrepreneur, which generally are all dissatisfied people.
Yeah.
Because the business never runs fast enough, we're not growing the way we want. And so that's why they're generally, when we look at the satisfaction, it's generally low because you expect it to do more. And the problem is they don't go as fast as you want. But then the growth of it is the indicator. When you have that satisfaction as an entrepreneur where it's you want it to do more, but you're actually delivering a high growth, that's an entrepreneur. That's someone that understands how it comes together, and their unsatisfaction or their lack of satisfaction is because they want to drive it to that next level of success. But the one that most people fall into, we did as well, which is the overwhelmed. Yeah. That's the type 4 one, which is I have that low satisfaction, but I'm not getting the results. And that's a super dangerous place to be in.
Yeah.
And I think when you talk to most entrepreneurs out there, they've been in that realm. And you're looking at death's door. The business is maybe going to go upside down. Yeah. I've had that. You've had that. Yeah. And it comes back in that decision making and maturity.
Yeah.
And if you can get through that, then you move back into the entrepreneurship route. Otherwise, firm death is a very high likelihood.
Yeah. Type 5, dead.
Dead. Yeah.
Well,
so that's kind of a little bit on that matrix.
Yeah. No, that's good. And none of that's wrong. You're not wrong if you're in a certain area. We want you to see where you are.
Yeah.
But I guess all three of us could say, if you can push through that, and there is something on the other side of that. And for a lot of people, type 4, you can be that's where a lot of people sell out. They get burned out. They just want to ditch it. Some people close it down. That's not a wrong decision. But we can also say, all three of us have hit the wall and hit it hard.
And splattered.
Right.
Yeah.
And splattered. And we're talking about money, profit, your own personal pay. All of that takes major hits. But man, adversity teaches you so much about yourself. Yeah. And I am a completely different person. I don't know if everybody loves the person I've become.
But do you love the person?
Yeah, I love me better, maybe, right?
That's good.
Yeah. To go, no, I've learned a lot. I've learned a lot through, having a partner like Julie to walk through a lot of that adversity with, and go, I stayed through it. I'm going to push through it. And man, I got beat up. And on the other side, sometimes you go, oh, will my scars ever go away? And they don't. Right. Well, you mature and you have those scars and you go, those are kind of part of who I am now. Yeah. Those are signs of what I've learned, signs of how I've matured. And so there might be people listening to this podcast and they're in the middle of that. They're like, I'm about to hang it up. Boy, everybody in my personal life is telling me to. And my team are looking at me like I'm insane. I will say you can there may be something on the other side. It doesn't necessarily mean your business is dead. Yeah. Though it looks dead to you, it may not be dead. We've all hit businesses where we thought, I've killed this thing. Now this one's dead. And
that was my first one.
Yeah.
It wasn't necessarily my fault, but I had to take the responsibility of it. And you know what? It's a hard lesson learned, but that's you either get up or you don't. And but you mature.
Yeah. And if you do sell and move on, that's okay. Yeah. You shouldn't feel bad about that. Yeah. But if you're like in this for the long haul, which I am, then there's some hope for you, I think. Yeah. Which is pretty cool. There's some hope.
Yeah. I will say that every time we were really close to throwing in the towel, I think our best work as a team always came in our darkest days.
That's true.
And the reason is when there is no other optionality except for one decision that you can make and where you're going to put all of your chips, it forces you to prioritize and really take stock in what can and can't be done. And it gives you ultimate clarity. And it's hard as hell. You're waking up at 3 a.m, you're panicked, right? Yeah. And you just don't know where things are going to go. But if you make those decisions and they turn out positively, they're kind of the best inflection points of your business. So for all those listening, and again, if you're going through one of those moments, you're not alone. We've been there too. No. Yeah. And there's multiple pathways. When we did the entrepreneurial matrix, the mindset matrix, you'll notice there's no arrows. Yeah. The whole reason for the matrix was so you can put a label on something. Like, where am I at? Yeah. And then determine what path you want to chart. There's no path that's actually going to be isolated or singular in motion. And so for anybody that's out there, you have that control. And it's up to you, but that you have to realize where you're at today and where you want to be, and then you can put the steps in place to get there.
And then do you want what it means?
Do you want what it means?
Right. And if you want that, then there's your path, you know, and there's a way to it. Yeah. Human organizations are hard. I mean, it's so tough. And y'all talked about, founders are technical. Usually they're great at what they do. They found a bunch of people that are willing to pay them a lot of money, or at least pay them plus a somebody and a somebody and somebody. So they're skilled at what they do, and they know how to talk about it, and they have all of this wealth of knowledge in their heads. And then, all right, I have employees now, and I'm supposed to scale this sucker, and I'm not supposed to be in the field, with doing whatever it is I do. Why is it so difficult for there to be a transition from technical founder to leader?
Where to start? Where to start on that?
Well, there's so many reasons why. One of them, hopefully you've developed a purpose of, this is what our business does, right? Here's our positioning, right? We're going to do this really, really well for the marketplace. You want your team to embody that same belief you have, because when you're smaller, you're the one who has that belief. So you've got to now teach them, when they're in the field without you, to care about the things you care about. And you find there's varying levels of team that care and don't care. Right. And that's fine. It's not their business, right? But you've got to give them a purpose and a mission to want to invest in. So that's hard. Passing on, the purpose to a team member who doesn't own the business. You can't say, y'all love this like I do. They don't. Right. They don't. Yeah. Sorry. So stop asking them to do that, right? That's not something they have to do. Passing that on. Then you got to hire people that are skilled. Right. And if you want to scale, you got to hire them where they're skilled at layers, right? One is the technical, highly skilled one that can review the junior skilled one. So you can send both of them on the field and still get everything done. Because we made a point, service entrepreneurship is about a technical deliverable, which often means it's being done, reviewed, checked, and then goes out the door. Right. So you got multiple levels, and that means there's some senior related people, some junior related people, and some people try to scale on a flat organization. Yeah. And that doesn't work because everybody's running around going, I'm not owning anything. They just clock out.
Everybody owns everything, and nobody owns anything.
They clock out, and the owner's like, why is nobody committed to this? Right. They don't know what they're committed to, and their job hasn't been defined. So there's some passing on the ownership, the belief, the values, but there's the technical skill you got to teach and hire for too, and that doesn't always work out.
No.
Yeah. Any other thoughts on that?
Yeah, people are messy. I'm messy, right? It's and that's the difference. I came from a world of machines. Machines are fine; they break down. You fix them, put more in. There's no emotion. There's no good days. There's no bad days. But when you run an organization built on people building knowledge work, it's freaking hard. Yeah, it's really hard. And so, as a technician, as someone who comes in as an entrepreneur, I think one of the big things, and I had this problem as an entrepreneur, you expect everyone to operate how you operate. Right. You built the company. The person you hired, and you taught me this, Jason, writing the book, was you're signing a contract. They're coming in. They want pay, and you're going to provide them work. It's a contract, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. And we generally, as entrepreneurs, think that's way more than a contract, right? And for some people it might be, but for a lot of people they're showing up, they're doing a job, right?
We're family. We're all in it together.
And you hear that
my family.
Right. You hear that a lot in that sort of that smaller, we're all in a shared space. It feels like family, and you actually have to break that down because when you get to in the teens and then past that, it's not a family, it's a business, and those are very different things. And so again, when you're looking to scale and you're looking at the difficulty of this, it's how do you understand how to delegate? How do you understand how to have those hard conversations? How do you manage around all the complexities that a person brings to the table? Right. Because we talk about a lot, they might have had a huge fight with their spouse the day before, and now they're checked out. Yeah. Yep. They've got vacations. Machines don't take vacations. They get some downtime, but that's planned maintenance. Right. Nothing is ever planned in a service organization built on humans.
Nope.
And so that's the stuff as a service entrepreneur that you get to look forward to. Yeah. But you got to work through, right? And it only gets harder the bigger that you get.
Yeah. And Jason, you wrote this definition of a human organization, which I thought was hilarious. I thought when I read it, I was like, okay, yeah, that totally makes sense. But it's just so funny. And I mean, you could put this on a billboard. It's so funny. A human organization is an organization focused on the production of knowledge-based thought deliverables. Yeah. Knowledge-based thought deliverables. Right, yeah. Such a great headline. But it's like when you think about it and break that down, I mean, that's true. Like there's no physical, tangible, really asset that's there.
Well, and that's what we say. These businesses, in a sense, are invisible. Yeah. The thing a client gives us, the thing we produce, and the thing we deliver then that we ask for money for is all, you can't see it. And it's a thought deliverable, which means the deliverable was created in the mind of a human. Right. Well, how the heck do you capacity train that?
Please.
Right.
It's nice.
They're distracted. They're pissed. They're happy.
A little gassy.
Yeah, a little gassy. They had a little too much whiskey the night before, and you're going to produce thought deliverables. I'm trying to get a lot of money for your thought deliverable, right? But who's the biggest problem? It's the founder. Yeah. It's like my thought deliverables, because on a founder, the weight on their shoulders is massive. Right. So the weight on their friends and family is massive too. And the family goes through these things too. And you find that because of that, you have some personal problems. Right. Yeah. That becomes pretty common. Yeah. You have some mental problems.
You got people screwing
I'm selling
up with
this
your
book, right?
Yeah, this is screwing up with your thought deliverables as you head out the house.
Right. Yeah. Right. So you leave the house and you are just in a totally different mindset. Yeah. And for me, I had to do some practical things. I had to get an office. I had to calendar work block, and these are the things that my partner helped me do to go, I got to take control of this. Yeah. And a lot of owners don't. They don't define and take control of their own work abilities and product, knowing that, and we make a point in the book, the capacity output of the founder and owner is the most important.
Which we tend to think, at least I have, that it's infinite. Like it's an infinite resource. I'll just take care of that real quick.
And it's infinite until it falls on your family.
Right.
And that's who takes the brunt of it.
Right. Yeah. And it's infinite. And then when you get older, which Ian, you and I are getting older.
We are getting older.
You're still a whippersnapper.
Oh, man. I'm actually in my 20s. It's just firm ownership. Yeah. Makes you look a little rough.
But then you move slower. Yeah. You start to want to do different things. Yeah. And that comes for everybody. And if you're in your 30s and 40s, that will come too for you. That's not bad. You're just entering new life, seasons, right. And you still have to have that mental focus. And so the thought deliverables, this is so big. Thought deliverables, the mental management of people's minds is so important, and that's where the melt came from. Yeah, like
I thought you were going to say that's where napping came from. Oh, that's, in your 50s, that's when we did.
That's right. We're supposed to get.
That's the next book.
That's right. Yeah. Of course, we're not taking naps, are we? See, that's the problem. We need more naps.
Nap with purpose.
Yeah. But so you think, all right, it's thought deliverables. Well, my mind's pretty screwed up. So so is the mind of my team. And you find out capacity is not just hours and time tracking,
right.
It's not only just calendar work blocking. The thing, the methodology we use, you have to really break down this person into this melt, and
what does MELT stand for?
So MELT is mind, emotion, location, and time. And so we go, does your team have the capacity to do more work, right? So that can be a simple question that we all wonder. And they go, yeah, they have 2 hours left in the week.
So that's the T. That's the time.
We could put it there, right? That's only one part of that. And that alone is complicated enough. Because if you assume your team efficiently manage their time well, that's laughable.
Right.
We don't as owners. Nobody does because we're human. We have emotions. So it's really, there's these 4 components. And their mind, their mental focus, right? And I'm ADHD highly, and so I've already, got a ding there. E, emotion, pretty emotional too. When things don't go my way, I don't get happy about it. I get unhappy.
You get a little sideways,
right? Yeah, I get a little sideways, right? We all have that. Your team have that too. That is chewing through their capacity.
Right.
If capacity is like this machine output of what you can use to produce revenue, you're chewing up some of it through the mind and the emotion of that person. And so those are things we generally say those are not controllable parts of the MELT model. Right. And then the LT are a little bit more controllable through policies and procedures of the firm where we go, hey, you're struggling, you're going to need to get a coworker because a lot of us are remote businesses. Right. And so location becomes something we can actually leverage to bring confinement to the capacity, to give them the gift of focus, and then time also is a component. I've hired you for 40, 45 hours a week. That's what I'm going to expect you to deliver to me in a very focused way. Yeah. And so time is something we need to understand, either budgeting our calendars or tracking our time. There's a huge conversation about that in the book.
Yeah, for sure.
So that's MELT. You got other thoughts?
My mind was blown when Jason walked through this in 2021, I think it was.
Yeah.
And it was hitting the nail on the head because it really explained the complexities that we saw. Because you talk about as trappings, so the trappings of the mind and the emotions, and those are the things that typically when firm owners are when we talk to them, they say, look, I know that someone's working 40 hours a week. There's billable and non-billable time, and so they're working really 32 hours a week, and then I throw in this buffer. I'm like, well, what's the buffer for? And they're like, oh yeah, they don't produce. People don't give us they don't produce it 100%. Maybe it's at 80%, and that's where the mind and the emotions that Jason had talked about and created back in 2021, which is the articulation of why we typically would put a buffer in. But now we can go ahead and have the conversation and be able to spot where this might be for each person because it's individualized. Yeah. We generally just usually would just straight line it. Where the location, good example is I work from home, and on a given day, because I work from home, I might get like 6 different interruptions about who's picking up the kid, and this came through as a bill, and I'm like looking at my wife going, I'm trying to do deep work here. Right, yeah. I'm not like Jason. I don't have an office I can go to, but that's where you can look at that, and that location makes sense. So taking the ability where traditionally we only looked at time and adding those other elements gets us an actual accurate representation of what can we actually expect from a given person and build from it. So it's a phenomenal tool. Yeah.
So I know how a calendar works, so I get time. Yeah. I understand spatial and location. So like if I have an employee with a butt in a seat, okay, they're in the right location. I got that sorted. How the heck does a firm owner regulate or understand, or at least even try to have any kind of sense of what the M and the E part of that is?
Well, a lot of what leaders of service-based companies fail to do is, I think they fail to look at the world around them and make their own assessments. Right? We make a point in the book. You don't operate through assumptions. You don't go, everybody's at their A game. No, they're not. And so what does it mean that everybody's not at their A game? Well, I want a chart and I want to make an assessment about it. And when you make assessments, this is something Ian's good at, you can do those over time and you start to note patterns. So it's not that you can control their mind and emotion. It's that you have to know where they are and your perception of where they are. Because we always say the person's own perception of their capacity, it's always wrong.
Right.
So you can't ask the team member, do you have capacity for more work?
And you can't
answer's no.
And you can't ask the team member, do you have ADHD? Let's just be clear.
Can't do that, right?
Not acceptable at all.
And you can't say, are you depressed or will you become pregnant in any time in the next 6 months, right? So these are all really big no-nos.
Right.
But you've got to give people the space to be those things, right? Because we are human, we are those things.
100%.
But what I have to do as a leader is I have to look at my team and I have to say, I got to know what I'm working with here.
Is it picking up cues through conversations?
Yeah.
Well, first of all, I think that's the biggest thing you just mentioned is having a conversation. We've talked a lot from owners. They're not even talking to their staff.
That's
if you're not talking to your staff, then you are trying to play in the dark.
Yeah.
But the conversations, generally will lead to getting some perception of kind of where someone might be at.
Yeah.
Also, just being aware and being more cognizant of what their patterns are and so forth. Because what you're trying to do is you're trying to create what you think is the starting point for their melt, and then you're adjusted over time based upon how things have delivered. So it's not a static sort of singular moment in time. It's looking over time. And
so if I have like a star who's just like doing incredible work, and then suddenly that work is starting to diminish and maybe they're dragging in a little late. If I'm tracking the score, that allows me to have a conversation with them that says like, hey, we've noticed something. Yeah.
And it also helps you, again, from an awareness standpoint, to be able to have a conversation, to be able to bridge, because they might be going through something really, really tough. And again, it doesn't mean you need to put your finger on it, but when you have a dialogue, amazing things happen with your staff because maybe they just need a little bit of space and they don't know how to ask for it. And so I think that's where, again, from an entrepreneur standpoint, it's realizing the difficulty of having the compassion. And that's all successful businesses, is having empathy and compassion. And a lot of us forget about that when you got your back against the wall.
And when you track melt, you start tracking it by person, right? Service-based companies are hard because you got to lead a person the way that they are. But if some of our resources that are going to come out are going to have the melt tracking by person, but in total, you can even total it by department, by your whole company. Then you start to see the larger patterns, and they all have to begin down there at that individual level. So it's a great question. How do you control the mind and emotion of the team? Turns out you can't.
I can't control mine, so I can't control yours.
Right. No. Well, that's a good point. We can't control our own. We try to do that in a better way, but we have to know. And that's part of being purposeful and intentional about running your company, is starting to study your team. And when you do that and you see those patterns over time, then you make hard decisions to fire some people. Sometimes you make decisions to promote people. It comes from the basis of knowing them. Sometimes you can, like we're going through kind of a 1.5 to 2 year pivot, into markets. That takes a lot of time. And you got to go, is my team ready? Will they step up? Because we're going to go do some new stuff. We're going to have new software, meet with new kinds of entrepreneurs. So we've got to move to new places in the market, which take time. And you got to study your team to know if they're ready. And when you make those pivots or those moves, sometimes some of your team aren't, and you move forward without them. And those are some of the hard decisions that come with some of this work.
Is this a metric that you share with your team? I mean, do you tell them like, hey, your melt score is a little low?
We don't.
No. It's generally used for the owners and entrepreneurs to get a pulse on what things are at. And that is used for the calculation for the purposes of knowing what you have. We'll talk maybe a little bit more about supply and demand, but and constraints. But no, it's you don't go to your employee and go, hey, we're going to call out your melt score. I've had to take a 20% discount on that this month. And the last 2 months you've been at 5%. So what's going on in your personal life? No, not acceptable. And again, I think it's subjective.
Very subjective.
But it also is, it's predicated on those conversations. And it is, when you start tracking it, though, it is very indicative because you start to really see and understand patterns and whatnot. And the conversations, because you've been doing it for a while, for quite a long time, they go quicker in terms of, when you're evaluating what folks are at. So you can, once you build the chart once, doing it over and over again becomes really easy.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it helps to provide context because that's something I learned from you that we do. It provides context to how you can help as a firm owner. Because it's not just like, oh, you're a bad person, you can't work. It could be so many different layers to it, and it's there's so many levers that you can pull to help somebody and coach them up. Depending on several things. So,
that's one key to service entrepreneurship. A lot of these founders are so service oriented people, and they want to care for people so much.
Right.
And client service is so huge to these people. Service entrepreneurs are very commonly known to want to offer very, very high value service.
Right.
It's kind of a deal for them. And they care a lot about their team too.
Yeah.
So this helps them care better.
Yeah.
It's funny. We asked and across different segments and industries, what was your priority of caring, or your priority of importance? Was it employees? Was it your clients? Was it your profit? So looking in the company, outside the company, and at the staff, the resources. And every service organization put profit last. It only was different between the employees and the clients, depending upon the talent pool that they had to work from, if it was constrained or not. And that was when it shifted. But the service entrepreneurs, they wear their heart on their sleeve, and they're really thinking most about everybody else.
Yeah.
And that's, Melt helps with that as well. The great thing about Melt is it does free you up in terms of, you may have a star employee, and they need to have a little bit of time and breathing space. And for the service entrepreneur, knowing they can only give you 32 hours in a given week, but then you have to discount that, so they're only giving you 24 hours, is actually quite freeing, because now you're not wondering in the back of your head, like, why am I not getting that extra bit from this person?
Right.
Because now you can step back, go, I understand, and I can give them the space. And it turns out those people will become more productive from you having that awareness.
Yeah, and probably more satisfied with their work and feeling like, okay, I'm actually contributing. And making a difference. Yeah. So calendar work blocking, we've talked a little bit about that. That's a big part. You guys take this interesting stance in the book where you're not necessarily hardline against time tracking, but you're like, Jason, you tried it for a while and you had that, and then you abandoned it, and so you found a better methodology that works. Talk a little bit about that. What is that, and how's that work?
Well, I want to go first on this.
Okay, go ahead.
That's a deep topic.
This was an area of conflict in the book.
Okay.
Neither of us are big fans of time tracking, but I work with firms at scale as well, and time tracking, I think it's in the book, it's over 70% usage. So when we were talking about the book, he's like, I am not talking about time tracking. And I'm like, well, I started a business that does practice management. And I'm like, look, I built my company to not even do time tracking. And then I had to add it in.
You have to add it in.
I had to add it in. And it's a very polarizing conversation. And when we did the interviews, it was also, and shockingly enough, for the accountants out there that we interviewed, we go, hey, do you do time tracking? And they'd look around, they're like, yeah, I do time tracking.
Like the guilty secret.
It was like a guilty secret, and it turns out like everybody's doing it. And it's interesting when we wrote the book, we had different stances coming in, but calendar blocking was the unifying component of that, because regardless of whether you did it or not, you had to manage your time effectively, and calendar blocking is one of those key tools to use. And that's we actually settled that had a good unification on the book. So now you can go, because it was a really funny sort of argument between us.
Well, it's really part of the data we need, right? So I remember in our firm, this was years ago, I'm like, I don't believe in time tracking, and I deleted the time tracking software, and then I was screwed because I didn't know how to make invoices. Right. That's the only way I made invoices. But that's how I used to do things. I'm done with that, and then on Monday we're done.
Yeah, just a grand gesture.
Right, grand gestures. Right. Yeah, not good. So time tracking for many years used to be used to produce revenue. That was a key. Yeah. And we're finding people that track time they say they track it for productivity, which is fine, but they don't necessarily use it to produce revenue.
Right.
But calendar blockers maybe that don't track time at all, they produce their revenue some other way. Obviously, it's not about time,
right?
Because they don't have any time data.
Yeah.
And so that's a value pricer perspective,
Right.
which is kind of what we are as a firm, which also is hard to do, turns out, right? Because most of the questions I get from people that I'm teaching value pricing to, they're like, where do I come up with a price?
Feels like licking your finger and sticking it straight up in the air to see where the wind is.
I tell them, I say,
or sticking an electric socket.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Well, crassly, I tell them it's located in your butt.
Yeah.
You pull a price out of your butt, right? It's
and you see if their eyes water when you give it to them.
Yeah.
Right. It's what you want to get paid. So calendar blocking becomes something totally different than time tracking.
Right.
We all know time tracking is tracking the past.
Yeah.
Calendar blocking is about teaching a person to plan, which I learned from Ian. Planning is a huge part of our work. Planning turns out to be very complicated, very difficult. The time horizons that I learned from you are incredibly complicated. Ian gets into all that in the book.
Right.
That stuff I didn't write because I didn't understand it. But that's what calendars blocking is meant to do.
Yeah.
It's like, let's look ahead and see what we can do. And what that does is it's kind of doing your timesheets in advance, basically. And what you have to do is the team has to plan well. Mm-hmm. They have to prioritize well because they have to go, I'm going to do this work on Thursday at 10 a.m.
So as the founder, am I writing everybody's calendar? Am I going, okay?
No.
You're writing your calendar.
Okay. Yeah, you're doing your calendar.
Yeah.
But we want the team, that's a skill we teach them in our firm. They onboard and we teach them calendar blocking. Yeah. And we say it's required. Yeah. So, and if your employee agreement says 40, 45 hours, your calendar is going to say 40 to 45 hours. We're going to start there, right? Yeah. And then I know you're committing everything that you agreed to when you signed the employee contract for the exchange of the salary I'm going to give you. Yeah. When we made that exchange, I get to ask you to book that time visibly on a calendar. Mm-hmm. And time tracking is not visible in any way. It just fades into the past. Yeah. But a calendar that's blocked is the person's own visible view of what they think they're going to do, how they think they're going to be efficient, how they're choosing to prioritize. So when our team struggle, we're tracking melt score, they start to struggle, we just pull up the calendar. Yeah. Well, let's see what you think is the perception of your own time. Yeah. And I mean, Julie's a master at this. Anytime a team struggles, she's like, just pull up the calendar, because she installed and taught project management in our firm and teaches it with me to other firms. And the calendar that's the place where they said, I'm going to do that for 2 hours. And we go, that's a 30-minute task. Yeah. Can you talk to me about why you put 2 hours on it? Because they had to put 2 hours. They had to create 40 to 45 hours. Right. And so it makes them visibly have to commit to something. And then we go, but it doesn't mean they're wrong. Sometimes it means we're wrong. Right. Sometimes we go, we gave you a client that we thought was going to be easier, that you booked this amount of time. Turns out it's a lot harder than I thought when I priced it, right? Because remember, I got that out of my butt, that price for that client. Not really. That's a joke for anybody listening. Yep. For any clients listening. It's all calculated and very theoretical.
Very scientific.
It's very scientific. Trust me.
Got an abacus and everything.
Oh, yeah. I got a few abacuses. But that's what we're trying to do. We need the visibility, and we need the visibility to be the perception of what the human thinks they're going to do, not today, but tomorrow. Because your view of what you think you're going to do tomorrow is the most enlightening thing I can get from a team member, right? Which is true for me too. Yeah, I need that to be forced into that planning. Yeah. So,
I mean, I think back to one of my co-founders, Stuart. We used OKRs, objectives and key results, and so we'd have our top 3 priorities, and I'd get this phone call, and he's like, "So, how's your number 1 priority going?" I'm like, "It's going okay." He's like, "So I looked at your calendar, and it doesn't really have any time associated to said priority." It's like, he's going calendar surfing again, right? But it's true.
We go calendar surfing at our firm a lot.
And it's frustrating, especially when you get thrown back at you as an owner, right? Right. But it's that accountability. And what's interesting is, there's been a lot of conversation around lagging and leading measures, right? What's interesting, time tracking and calendar blocking, one's a lag, the other one's a leading measure.
Yeah.
And so timesheets, when you get to the end of the period and you look at somebody's timesheet, what are you going to do then? It's like I have my dog who just, basically had a big problem in my kitchen the night, and I walk out there. I can't really scold the dog. The time's passed, right? Now we got to go forward, right? Now I got to teach what we want to do going forward. And so when you do the calendaring situation, you calendar blocking. It's that thoughtfulness. It's that purpose. It's that I have control of my calendar. I have control of my priorities, and I'm going to determine how I'm going to allocate that based upon what we've agreed upon. Where on the timesheet, you're all reactive. And then you look at it at the end of it and you're like, okay, what do I do from here? Yeah. And so it's just a change of perspective. And it's truly, giving ownership. The first thing we tell folks when they come into my business, because it's a tech company, look, tech companies are great. They will suck up every minute of your day, and it will be there 24 hours a day, just there ready to take more away. And so I tell them, hey, when you come in, first thing you need to do is block your calendar for your personal space, for your time. Because if you don't do that, it's going to take it away. And so the next step of that sort of journey is, okay, now we've protected your personal time. Now we're going to be thoughtful about your priorities and where are you going to spend that time and how are you going to allocate that? Because we need to make sure we're working thoughtfully to get to those things. And so calendar blocking is just a whole shift. Yeah. And you're right, it's about the future.
Yeah, yeah. And it's not and it's not us saying time tracking's wrong, calendar blocking's better. They're both flawed.
Yeah. Right.
We're humans, and that's the point. We're trying to pick a better methodology. And I think in the book, we're clear that we think, planning ahead, calendar blocking is probably a better methodology. But what it does do, it brings accountability. Because in our firm, it's required to block your calendar a week ahead. Julie and I block ours a year in advance.
The most intense calendar blocking you've ever experienced.
That's crazy. We teach that every year to our Thrival members. So we do it a year in advance, which is a reflection of its strategy. But a team member doing it weekly is a productivity focus. Right. These are time horizons that Ian teaches in the book. Yeah. But we also know it's not perfect, right? So a timesheet. We all know people don't know what they're putting on their timesheet or the line.
Oh, they know what they're putting on it.
Well, yeah. Or they're not doing them, right? A lot of people we coach, we're like, I can't get my team member to do the timesheet. And we're like, that's weird. But I get it, you know? The calendar's the same. It's like, why are you doing this? This calendar doesn't make any sense. Yeah. Did you copy this from last week? But all of it brings accountability. Because in our firm, we'll use shared calendars that we all have to see. We have to look at each other's calendar. And it's right there saying, I'm going to do this work on Thursday. So we get to ask on Friday, did that project go okay yesterday? I saw it on your calendar. It's like, ooh, didn't get to that. Where did it go?
And what did you do during that block?
What did you do during the block?
Yeah.
And I don't know. Yeah, sometimes we can tell what people are doing during their blocks, and they're not telling us.
It's really good because again, we collaborated on the book. Where my particular priority sat within his calendar, because he's like, "Look, man, I can't meet with you for like 3 weeks." I was like, "Well, I guess I'm pretty low on the priority list."
Yeah, right? It's like shows where my co-author is.
It's like, bro, I made this calendar in 2024.
Yeah, exactly. He's like, you didn't talk to me a year ahead of time.
Yeah, exactly.
No.
Get in line.
Yeah.
So you said there's 3 P's to calendar work blocking. There's prioritization, planning, and predicting.
Yeah.
What do those 3 P's have to do?
Yeah. Well, so P, planning, is just the effort of blocking a calendar in advance, is stopping and going, what am I going to do today? I mean, what am I going to do this week? That effort is so much more effective, than just blowing through a day and going, what did I do today? Yeah. Before I did calendar blocking, I used to get home and go, I didn't get nothing done. And, my wife's like, well, you worked 10 hours. Yeah. So what were you doing? I don't know. And that's not being intentional. That's not effective.
That's the entrepreneurial whack-a-mole machine.
That's right. Yeah. You're just like putting out fires. Yeah. And when you
being a hero.
Yeah. When you start planning, you're starting to say to the world, here's what I'm planning to do. It never works out perfectly what you plan, but a lot of your plan will work out. So planning is much, much better. What's the second P?
Prioritizing.
We have 3 R's, 3 P's.
Yeah. Prioritizing is, turns out, super hard skill. Super hard skill. And if you're blowing through life really fast, you don't prioritize. There are times our team will choose to use their capacity on things they shouldn't use it on this week. They should use it on next week, so that they don't try to cram. Some team just cram too much in a week, and we're like, some of this should spread out. This is a kind of a 3-week calendar. Let's kind of move these out. Yeah. It turns out they're not good at prioritizing. Yeah. And prioritizing is a skill to say, I'm going to not do this work because I'm going to put something in front of it. Right. That means whoever gets the result of this second thing that I deprioritize gets it later than the first person. Yeah. Well, that has a lot of context. The importance of the work, the speed, the client, the money, the value. So many things go into the choice of a priority that a team member makes. Also, we want to see what part of their personal life is influencing the priorities that they're making. Right. That happens to all of us, and it should. And so we get to see that, right? And we're like, you have to build your calendar. We let our team build their calendar. So they're blocking when they pick up kids, which is a cool part of working for a remote firm. Right. But I need 40 to 45 hours a week on your calendar.
So where's that block go?
Yeah, is it at night? And the people who do it really well, they'll get stuff done early in the morning, or they'll move some blocks down lower in the evening. Yeah. Because at its base, I need you to exchange that amount of hours with me for the amount of salary I'm giving you. Right. That's the first economic exchange I make with team to, in a sense, purchase that capacity from you. So that's mine, in a sense.
Yeah, sure.
So I need you to be really good at how you choose to use it. And also, I get to have a lot of opinions about where you choose to put that.
And then in predicting.
Predicting, yeah. Thank you for feeding me the peas.
Yeah, I read the book.
Yeah,
it's good.
Well, I read it too. Yeah. And predicting is just to be able to prioritize. You're trying to predict what's gonna be coming at you. Yeah. And all of it is countering being unintentional. Right. Is to look at the future and go, I know what's coming, what could come. The one way we get our team to do that, Julie kind of came up with this model where at the beginning of each week, we need these professionals to brain dump their mind. That's a real skill, right? Because again, we're all mental. This book is based upon invisible things, our mental capacities. And so she has our team brain dump their minds at the beginning of each week. That's what you use to plan, right? So it's like, get your mind empty. That's a goal for the founder, entrepreneur, and for the team. Empty your mind. Always empty your mind. You want it visibly written, put somewhere, because things floating up here are not good for you, as we all know, right? 100%. Those come out at 3 a.m., the witching hour. So if the team brain dump it, then we go, now where does it go? And as you think about it, you come up with more and more and more. And that's an effort of kind of predicting, where am I going to put these things that have come out of my mind that I know I have to do?
Just living on purpose. Working on purpose.
Yeah, I think it goes planning, ultimately prioritization, predicting, and then that is all predicated on the fact that it's all predicated on the sort of direction. So it goes back to the entrepreneur service leader. What are these people trying to accomplish? Yeah. And when you have that, then you can have the evaluation of like, how did you do those activities, and does it ladder to what the results that we wanted to? So you don't get the phone call from your co-founder saying, well, I looked at your calendar, and it's not aligned at all to what we've decided as an organization we're doing. But that's again, you have to think about it. You're giving ownership for someone to take control of how they're going to treat their sort of work and their work behavior versus criticizing them after a timesheet's done. Right. And that's the whole change of the relationship. But it's all, again, going back to the contract terms of, you said you're going to work this many hours, I'm going to pay you for that. Now let's be productive.
Yeah. I love that. That's so good. So as people are scaling up their company, there's different plateaus, there's different levels that they have. So you guys have these different stratas that you've identified, are the kind of the four as people start going up. What are those four stratas?
Yeah, when we went in the book, we talked about it has to do with a lot of the organizational structure. So, it starts off with being flat, everyone does everything. And then it starts to evolve, what we talked about before, which goes back to the management level. Yeah. So management typically, you can only handle so many people at once. So that's where we go through the concept of spans of control. And so at about 8 people, you have to bring in some sort of management level. And so that management level usually spans between 8 to 12. And then you get into the departmental. So departmental means you might have a service line that you depend upon. You start to break those particular service lines maybe into multiples. Maybe it's the same service but done with multiple teams, or maybe it's 2 different services. And that's where we see that evolving around 13 to 25. And then from that departmental, then you got to go into your leadership. And that leadership is 25 to 50. And that's where we talk about, getting maybe a couple C-level folks to be able to drive it, not as a practice, but as a business. We actually had a conversation with Steph Hines when we talked to her. She's a fantastic business owner, thought leader, and she was very adamant when we did the interview, if you remember. She's like, I don't run a practice, I run a business. And that's the key thing to think about when you're doing service organizations, especially if it's a professional one, whether it be legal or accounting, is you're trying to build a proper business with the scaffolding that's required so that you can ultimately ensure that it can lead itself.
It can carry the weight.
It can carry the weight, exactly. And so that's kind of, when we talk about the strata, those are the different phases that you go through. And that is akin to those different scaling boundaries, so scaling plateaus that we talked about, because of the structure and the scaffolding that's required for you to navigate that.
Yeah. And it's one thing we find, especially in our coaching and consulting, is you have to navigate through those layers at the right times.
Right.
And none of us totally know what those are, but a lot of times we're coaching with a lot of entrepreneurs, and when they get to sometimes 2 or 3 people in their company, they're like, my next hire, they're going to replace me. And now we can say, not yet, right? Because that's too early. So you don't navigate through these stratum too early. You do it at just the right time. Yeah. And one point we make in the book is that a lot of service entrepreneurs add complexity to their life that they're not ready to manage.
Right.
And so you don't add complexity until the complexity is required, because the structure is heavy enough that you need people to help you carry the weight of that, what we call scaffolding. So navigating through those stratum is done very intentionally. And a lot of times people try to add roles that are too high up, maybe in an accountability chart, and they have to bring them down lower and bring people in as low as they can.
So you've seen like a top heavy organization potentially,
right?
If you're moving too fast.
Yeah. In a top heavy organization, sometimes you'll find they tried to jump to a leadership or a C-suite mentality too fast, and the organization can't afford a bunch of C-suite people.
Right.
So it's just got a bunch of leaders that are paid a lot of money, and C-suite, they're not meant to generate revenue. And so it's a very costly move. So you have to do it in a very organized and paced way.
Yeah.
This part of the book was actually really interesting. So we met on, I flew in on a second trip, and we talked about organizational design and structure. And I said, hey, Jason, the way I see it and the way the data has shown it is that there's these flat organizations. They then go to this hybrid phase, and then they become hierarchical. And then he's like, well, I define this as the stratum. And it was just really interesting to see kind of how the two sort of views that we had were completely aligned.
Totally.
And I had looked at it from trying to analyze the data set, and you had done it from your consulting side.
Yeah.
And it was one of those things where like, oh my goodness, like these things are 100% match.
Yeah.
And we actually had the way to define it with clear terms. And for me, it was providing you some clarity on what are those sort of tiering, right? Where we talked about the 0 to 7, 8 to 12. And for me to be able to have the labels of what those were, what we were going through. So it was one of those things where it just kind of, when it came together, we're like, oh my God, that totally makes sense.
Yeah.
It's fascinating.
What happens at that 0 to 7 spot that makes you go like, okay, it's time for the next level? Like, where's that pinch that you're feeling? Is it because the founder is now having to, or the owner is having to manage, 6 people, and then it's just too much for them to do that, plus do the work? And
well, a lot of times we have a chapter in here that starts with revenue, and a lot of things, it really does start with revenue.
Yeah.
And so at 7, there has to be enough revenue to support 7 people.
Right.
And so when you just hit that volume of revenue, it to support 7 people, that's the point. It just becomes hard on the owner. They're like, I can't manage this revenue anymore. The amount of revenue to support 7 people now has so many client needs that still run through the owner.
Yeah.
And so that's when they go, maybe I need a senior or a manager to help me. And a lot of times that in that first hire, they'll try to hire a technical person that is them. And the perception of the entrepreneur is that it's the technical revenue that's providing the problem. But a lot of times we need them to get an operational person that's non-revenue generating, because the operational chaos at that size is so high.
Right.
They don't think to cull the chaos. So a lot of the entrepreneur, what they're feeling is they're not producing all the revenue, but that's where we go. Yeah. It's like these clients, there's just so many.
Right.
It's like, well, at your size, you're probably not doing all of that. What you're dealing with as the owner is a lot of operational chaos.
Yep.
You're just trying to get contracts out, price, check up on team, do one-on-ones, do core value call-outs every week. There's so many things that are non-revenue generating, but we attach it to revenue, so we attach it to hiring a technical expert, which you can't yet afford at that size. So you can start leaning on somebody from a senior mentality. So I don't know, what you think, but revenue really drives a lot of the bulk of the problem.
I think this goes back to where we had the theoretical and the practical together. So 100% agree that revenue drives what you can do with the organization, the capacity, and the people. And when we were talking about this, I came from the theoretical standpoint, which was when you look at spans of control and you look at how you can manage people, you're just looking at people dynamics and organizational strategy. Typically, a person can't manage more than 8 people. So I had this through my career at the various different tech companies I worked at. As soon as I hit 6 to 8, I'm going like, all I'm doing all day now is just meeting with people, dealing with whatever that is, and I'm not actually able to get anything done. Right. So I had teams of 12, I had teams of 20, and it was just unsustainable. And that's where the service entrepreneur is just pulling their hair out, because at that 8 people mark, you start to lose. And this is what Jennifer put her finger back on, to go back to her. She's like, I don't know what so-and-so is doing. Right. I don't have enough bandwidth and time to be able to watch and manage that. And so that's when you start to go, I need to get someone else here that can either operationally help me out or manage it. And you're right. They typically go like, well, I'm going to get another technical person in here. No, that's just another person that's going to report to you, another person you have to lead. And so spans of control really play out here in terms of how do I make sure I've got a finger on the pulse, we're driving to the right goals, and I can delegate with risk of failure and be able to make sure I'm managing correctly. But it does start with revenue.
Yeah. So the pain you're feeling might not be what's causing the problem, and so look at what the root is. Typically operations. 9 times out of 10.
A lot of times.
So okay, that's kind of like that 0 to 7, and then you're kind of going to that 8 to 12. Once you start getting out of the 8 to 12 into the 13 to 25, what's the pain points that they're feeling? Is it more the same, that you're just needing more managers and people that are kind of help you with the operations?
It's different. It's different at every stage.
Okay.
So the stages, the pains you feel are not the same. I think in that management, that next one, you're now very clearly in the stage where your team are providing all of the client service, or you want them to be providing a lot of it. So now you have a manager by proxy acting like you on behalf of you to the clients, which is our goal in our business, is to serve a client, so they'll give us revenue. And that turns out to be pretty difficult, to teach another person to lead and serve in the way that you would. And that's really clear what I was saying. You don't direct your managers to go lead the way you want to lead. Lead based upon how I would do it, as dictated in the mission and the values. So you're not out there on your own. You're on behalf of an organization that already has an established mission. So at that stage, you find now leadership type people going rogue, doing things their own way, having opinions, which are not bad.
But kind of paying for it.
It's And then you're like, wow, my company is being run in ways that I never intended. And so now we have nothing to do with revenue now. We're trying to, but of course the revenue's doubled at this size. So you got more client service. So now not only do you need a technical leader who can review other people's work, but you need somebody who can do client service. Those are two things. If you're good at technical services, that's one thing. Even if you lead the review and the oversight, quality control of a technical service, that's one thing. Going to a client meetings, client problem solving. That's hard to delegate. But you have done that at that stage. You have a manager, and what you're giving them to do is to client service on your behalf.
Right.
And you leading those efforts, super hard to know how to do it. Now this is where Julie and I say you're starting to be a leader leading leaders.
Yeah.
That's a really hard waterfall.
Which is a really, like, the communication required for that.
Massive.
It's different.
Right.
I'm going to go on a weird analogy. It's like parenting.
Yeah.
And so for those of you who have kids, maybe this, parenting is just a slow retreat, right? So you're backing up. Every phase that you go through with your kids, it's just a different phase. It doesn't get easier.
Yep.
It just is different, right?
Right.
And when your kid becomes a teenager, right, you're having to step back further. And you have to let them run. And it's the same thing with the businesses at that point. You've got to be able to realize the business is no longer your thing that you control. You're trying to drive something bigger than yourself. And for a lot of entrepreneurs, it's hard because your ego, everything you've been doing for so many years is tied up in the business. Yeah. But you cannot grow it through that stage until you're able to delegate and let go and be able to help drive the machine. You're supporting it. You're not the one that's commanding everything at that point. And that sort of trust and transition between, that departmental stage, 13 so forth, to my opinion, is really hard for a lot of folks. It was hard for me.
Hard for us.
And, when you're in that situation, you're trying to drive for, what am I really trying to get out of this, right? And it's not about having full control, but it's allowing for others to come in and be able to lead. Yep. And we talk about it later, but also in that stage, you have to realize that you're bringing in people that aren't necessarily fully productive in the fact that they're not billable for the whole time. Yep. So not generating revenue. And so you have to maximize what we call pods. We'll probably talk about it a little bit later. And so that gets you to higher profitability. Yep. And so it's a really, really interesting stage because you're trying to create this most productive business that you can while putting layers of management and departmentalization. It's where a lot of the chaos happens.
Yeah.
So once we get into the 13 to 25, a founder's focus is, how do I refine this business, make it, sustainable, not client focused necessarily, and doing the work?
Correct. Think about it. It goes back to what I said before. It's about revenue.
Yeah.
You've got to make sure you're getting that revenue, and that's your job number one. And then second of all is you're making sure the machinery is working really, really smoothly.
Yeah.
And now for the founder, your clients are your team.
That's exactly
specifically your managers.
That's right. Yeah. And probably entering that 13 to 25 phase, this is when there's a heavy bifurcation that most entrepreneurs don't notice, which is the organization's needs become preferential to the founder's own personal preference.
Right.
Yeah.
And that is, we don't always see that.
Yeah.
So we keep funneling cash, or I kept funneling cash out of the business, the organization's like, I need you to save that because you're about to hire a leader that costs more money than you actually.
Yep.
And you don't note those things. Yeah. But when that turn happens, the organization becomes first.
Yeah.
And the owner has to, in a sense, serve the organization. So now my role is the CEO, and I have to do a job. Somebody's got to do it. The organization is of the size where somebody has to do the visionary role. Yeah. They have to. Right. It has to happen in this company. Yeah. I happen to be the one to do it. It's not always the founder.
No.
Tech companies, they'll replace the founder often.
Right.
It's not always a founder, but there's a hard line change where that organization has to become the main goal for the founder to serve the organization. We make a huge point about that in the book.
Yeah.
Big.
Yeah. The one thing to add on that is earlier in my career, I hired someone that was more expensive than me. And my ego got so wrapped up into it, which was like, oh, I'm more important than this person, yada, yada, yada. And now in my current business, I hire people, quite often make more than me. And I am happy to pay that because, they're filling a role and a need the organization has to have. And at the end of the day, I want this thing to be bigger than myself, but also I'm an owner of it. So I want to have the best of the best,
right.
and that comes at a premium. And that's just a hard pill for a lot of people to swallow.
Yeah, it's a pivot, and you got to stop cosplaying as an owner,
right?
And actually, like, do it.
That's right.
So I love that. And you talked in the book. People need to read this about the 3 R's: revenue, resources, and recipes. That's that foundation for optimization. So there's so many different things you guys break down about how to kind of manage this and think about where you are in the space.
Yeah. It was and we summarized it by the what, the how, and essentially the why. So, when you have those 3 together, that's what creates the most profitable organization you can have. Yeah. But you need all 3 running in tandem.
Yeah. And it's hard to run them all 3 at the same time.
Spinning lots of plates.
That's right.
That's right.
But so in chapter 8, there's a talk about it just taming the inevitable chaos. Is how the chapter's titled. And you're talking about taming this chaos, which is this nemesis of efficiency, which is variability and uncertainty. Yeah. How does that play as companies are trying to scale and grow?
Yeah. Frankly, this was one of the harder chapters that I was writing because it took a lot of I think introspection and reflection on things, because meet with so many businesses and they're like, it's so hard to do these particular things. I'm trying, how do I simplify this down? And it came down to, well, why do we use operations management and why do we use planning? And time is a component that exists in both of them. But the problem is the reason why the operations are so difficult is because the variability that everything exists. And when we looked at this and we had this conversation around, well, what's different really between a human-based organization, so these service organizations, versus a manufacturing environment, I'm like, look, variability is the huge problem here, because in a machine setting, we can predict that. We know what it is. You can measure it, and it's got its own standard control charts where you can go ahead and make sure they sit within spec. I'm like, person goes sideways, like all of a sudden variability is just off the charts.
Off the charts.
And you talk to person after person. We went through this whole situation where we did all these interviews, and they're like, yeah, I show up to work and somebody quit. Like, what do I do with that? Or somebody went on maternity leave and that came out of nowhere. And I'm like, well, you look at the variability and it's so difficult to manage, but you have to be able to plan around that. And then the second one was really uncertainty. And so when we asked folks, well, what do you do for planning? And I gave them the list of all the different planning things. And they're like, well, I kind of maybe do that one. And I thought I did that one, but I don't do the other 6. I'm like, holy. And it came down to, well, why aren't you not doing it? Well, planning's difficult because of the uncertainty of time. Yeah. And the further we go out from today, the more it becomes unpredictable, uncertain, and it's just not a happy place to be. Yeah. But we unfortunately have to be running these businesses that need to have, an understanding how best we can to be able to predict the future, to be able to plan for today in order to make things happen. And so you have to be able to tame those 2 things. You have to be able to bring them in and try to ultimately overcome the difficulties that will arise. And so that's why the whole second half or the third part of the book is centered all around the operations management for the taming of the variability, and then we do the whole section on planning for the uncertainty.
Yeah. And it's he brings the data analysis side of the book, and I bring this. Oh my God,
this stuff is hard.
This stuff is hard. We did that last week. But Julie and I, my partner, we'll go through consulting. And what we do in consulting with these service-based organizations is we install structure. That's what we do. And it takes 6 months just to get it defined and deploy it and launch it into a company. In our consulting engagements, we can go into one of our meetings. It's like, all right, we're going in to review the structure. And they go, 2 leaders quit. We're like, over. The structure is over. Right. The 6 months is over. We redefine the engagement. And we walk them through solutions and planning of having dealt with this uncertainty. And it is so complicated. And so when you get to, and you think about that gets harder when you're in a 15 to 25 person service organization and, 2 of your leaders quit, you're screwed.
Yeah.
I don't know how
like
else
a bomb
to
goes
say
off.
it.
Yeah.
A bomb goes off in your company, and you got all your plans go out the window. And so this planning, that last third of the book, to learn so much about uncertainty and the variability that we all live within that we don't know about. That's such an important part of the book that really Ian spearheaded, because it's so true. I didn't realize how true it was. I live it on a daily basis,
Right.
but when he wrote a lot of that, I'm like, yes, this sounds so technical, because it's a pretty technical part of the book.
Right.
So necessary to understand that in any moment there can be something that can blow up this huge structure that's just humming,
Right.
And things rarely just keep humming. It's because humans just don't hum the way you need them to hum.
Nope.
I don't.
Yeah, and it's the whole thing. You get it set up just exactly how you want. You're like, okay, everything's perfect,
Right.
and then boom.
Boom.
Yeah.
And the point, I want to give some hope to the surface entrepreneur, right? This happens. It's okay.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean you're wrong, you don't figure it out, you're not smart enough. It means this is how these organizations run. And part of the book was to say, this is more complicated probably than you knew. That's part of the book. And so here's some structure to help you. It doesn't mean you're doing it wrong. It means there's a lot outside your control when it comes to uncertainty and variability.
I mean, to quote The Godfather, this is the business we have chosen.
Right.
That's right.
Exactly.
Can you completely avoid and take the uncertainty out, or are there just tools that you need to kind of put together that when it invariably comes and when all the weird stuff happens, you go like, okay, I have my operating system, I have my tools that I can then navigate through it.
Yeah. When we walk through it, the uncertainty is managed by controlling the variables that you have control with over the time span that you're looking at. And so the very far outreach is part of planning. You don't have much control, except for you can control things like revenue. I can determine where I'm going to get my revenue from and be able to drive efforts to be able to be able to determine my mix and be able to determine, how much I need. And then as you step in from time, you can then start to further add more controlling variables until you get to the present, where I have not necessarily full control because I can't control people, but
Right.
but I have perfect information. And so the time means that your information gets less and less fluid or capable. And so that's where we walk through the various different planning mechanisms, because those are the things you can do to try to create predictability and understanding. And that's how then you can plan to make the business successful. And so, when we go on the furthest outside, we're talking about the demand. When we get a little bit closer, we start talking about the resources and the people. That's what we talk about workforce planning. So annual plan, it's our best guess what we can do for the next year. Workforce planning is, doing that about 6 months out. That's where we're controlling the resource mix that we have, because we know what the demand mix was, because we set that for a year. And then we start to get closer into the quarter. And that's where people talk about capacity planning.
Right.
And I think that's an overloaded term, because capacity planning, people assume it to be all forms of planning.
Right.
No, it's just trying to figure out, okay, if I've got this much revenue and I've got this much of collective resources, not even knowing what the resources can do the numbers align? Do I have at least enough bodies?
Yep.
That's when we talk about capacity planning. And then you get into the really hard one. The hardest one is the production planning.
Yeah.
That's when you're inside of a quarter and you say, okay, I've got this people, because I can't hire anybody. Right now, it's in certain professions, it's 3 months to be able to get somebody, 6 months to get them fully productive, right? And so I can't just throw bodies in. So now I've got, Johnny, who's able to do X, Y, and Z, and Sue that can do A, B, and C. They can't do each other's jobs. So how do I make this sort of matrix of bodies and skill sets then marry to the revenue that we've promised? And that's the hardest bit. And once you get that laddering, then you can move into, okay, well, Jason decided that he had to take a week off because he's gone sideways. And now I got to move all his work to somebody else. That's where we do the load balancing, because he was working on 10 things, but Johnny was doing 20 and Sue has already done 30. So I got to balance this out. And then it gets into like, what are you doing on your day-to-day basis? And that's your work prioritization. So these planning tools, from essentially horizon planning, which is way far out, annual planning, workforce planning, to capacity planning, production planning, load balancing, and work prioritization. That is the world I love and live in.
That's why Ian wrote that
go.
part of the book.
And it's such a fascinating section too when you think
yeah.
about the planning horizons, because there are certain things you need to pay attention to more than others.
Yeah.
And so you outline that so well. The book really goes into it, just like what are the things that are noise noise, what's actual signal. And if you can figure that out, it's fascinating. I mean, I started my first business 28 years ago. So after 28 years doing this, reading this book, there's a line where you said a lot of times companies get, I don't know which of y'all wrote this, but our founders get in trouble when they try to sell what they're good at doing and not looking at their team and going like, what can my team do?
Yeah.
I'm going to sell that.
Yeah. That was Jason.
Yeah.
And it's such a great
If you liked it, I wrote it.
Yeah.
If you didn't like it, Ian wrote it.
Yeah, but great thought.
Yeah.
Like I think founders are just so aspirational, living on a different horizon when it's like, okay, we have a quarter, we need to pay bills.
Yeah.
What do we need to do?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's what size does. Size means now you need a certain volume of revenue to meet the needs of the size of that team. Yeah. And when you do that, you have to sell things that a bunch of other people can produce, not you. But when you're smaller, a lot of times you're selling things you do, and you have helpers to help you do it.
Right.
That's the 3 to 5 people, and you just don't know the weight of selling a whole lot of things that other people are doing that you don't know the status of. And I think it makes you nervous.
If my memory recalls, when we talked about that, because one of the things where I'm in a pinch, I don't have enough revenue. So the argument there is, okay, we take what we have right now and let's go into another industry or another niche or another focus, and let's just sell it there. And I think you did it. I did it. That was the only time my business went flat.
Yeah,
was when I lost what my people could do and where my perspective was, going after another sort of target outside of that. My team's not going to be able to do that. And so, again, you got to be thoughtful about where you're going to apply the effort to get the revenue and ensure that revenue can be served. And that was something you taught me in the book.
Yeah.
Yeah, so good. So great principle. Another thing you guys talk about is applying all of these old school methodologies to service-based businesses. So like, your daddy Six Sigma, I didn't ever think that I would, in a service-based, a book that I would read about Six Sigma and lean and all that. But you guys talk about it and apply it in a really fascinating way. What was it about Six Sigma and those kind of different methodologies that you thought, okay, this needs to be applied to a service-based business? Because I don't have a product, I don't have an industry where, widgets are coming out of, a conveyor belt. So why that?
We talked about this, and I'm probably going to irritate a few folks, but I have been irritated because I have my degree is in industrial engineering operations research. It's in what was before Six Sigma became popular, and we see a lot of people applying Six Sigma and lean, which are actually manufacturing concepts. Yeah. And they just don't work. They don't work in a service organization where a machine and when I worked in semiconductor manufacturing, there's a whole production line and the stuff goes through, and again, it's very measurable. But when we build a thought deliverable, it may have multiple levels of review. It goes all over the place. And so in the book, I wanted to clarify, and you and I talked about it. Yeah. Where, what does it actually mean to do Six Sigma, total quality, to TQM, and ultimately lean? And I wanted to set the record straight on kind of how those apply. Yeah. And so one of the ones when we talked about Six Sigma, it was all about reducing variability. And so again, when we do that with machines, you're trying to look at what the machine does. We might tune it, but you can't do that with a person, right? They are going to go sideways. Right. And so there's let's just be clear. There is no getting to Six Sigma in any service organization. Right. You can get to, less variability. Three Sigma, maybe. But, there's no way you're going to get to that level of perfection. But the goal is the same. The goal is we want to reduce as much variability as we can. And then when we look at waste management, which is what lean manufacturing is all about. We talk about lean within a actual service organization. There's concepts in there like transportation, motion, inventory. Shoot, I don't have any of that stuff in a service organization. But the ethos of what it was right. So we redefined all the core terms, and then we replaced that with, again, from the transportation, it was team management, because it's, there's a lot of friction. I mean, many of the folks here use, collaboration software, and, the amount of back and forth that we have, and the more the remote the team is, there's all that friction that you got to get to just to get to consensus, right? And then, when we talked about inventory, we talked about that as the information. I need to answer a client because they've called, but I need to go to one place where all that information is in. That's the type of world I've been living in for the last 11 years. And so, how do we get that all into one place? That's where, build a whole company called Carbon for that.
Yeah.
And then the last one was really on motion. And we don't really move material overall, and so that one also had to be redefined. So we go through that in the book in detail, and it's not necessarily about the concept or the terminology of Lean and Six Sigma, but it's about how do we deal with the waste in our firms to be able to maximize productivity for the effort of profitability, but then how do we remove the variability overall?
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, and in attaching inventory to kind of like knowledge about a client and a project was so smart. It was a really great way to think about that. I think that really works.
Yeah.
So,
and I learned so much in that section when Ian wrote it, because a lot of firms do try to misapply some of that, but it does make a point that still we run intricate businesses that have things to track. It's data we need. It needs to be written down, all in the effort to lower variability and lower uncertainty. Yeah. We have that in spades in a thought deliverable knowledge company. Yeah. So a lot of those things can apply, and they were, Ian did an amazing job of rewriting those things that do apply to service-based organizations. So that was a pretty fascinating part of the book for me too.
Yeah, it was great. Toward the end of the book, you guys start talking about just what is success and what's not success, and what you should be tracking and seeing as success. If you going back to that kind of like entrepreneurial a matrix, and you're looking at that, you have these different personalities that are achieving. The people that aren't satisfied, they're like, let's do the next thing, even if you're doing it in a measured way. You're still trying to get to that place, wherever that place is. I think there's a fallacy sometimes where people want to define success by say it's size or revenue or headcount. Why is that a fallacy, Jason?
The reason people want to do it is they're trying to create certainty in their life.
Right.
They're like, I'll just get to this kind of revenue, but there's so much that's intertwined between revenue and headcount. It's the types of roles they had. It's the types of revenue you sell. One part of the book laid out 7 considerations of revenue and how that creates such complexity. Right. But people are always going to lean towards, cool, I'll just get to 10 more people, or I'll get to $1 million in revenue. There's a lot of design that goes into each of those phases. And the point of the book is it's a step phase component, right? I think, Ian, you make that point in the very first chapter. The scaling goes in waves. It's wave 1, and then you kind of pull back, wave 2, and there's changes at each wave, and each wave is different. They're not all the same. So it's really a fallacy just to boil everything down you do in a knowledge-based, thought-deliverable company to just a bucket of revenue and headcount. Right. Yeah, it doesn't work.
I go to a lot of conferences for work and so forth. And, at the conference setting, it's like, you see somebody, you haven't seen them for 6 months, and you go, how's it going? I'm at 4 million revenue, and I've got 60 bodies. And whatever it might be, that's a really bad profitability.
Yeah, it is.
But when I went to Thrival, now it's been it would have been over a decade ago. Yeah, and we'd have these deep conversations with folks, and they'd open up and they'd say, look, I'm making $2 million in revenue, but I'm miserable. Yeah. I'm unhappy. And I feel like my profitability is really low. And so that stuck with me. And then when we were doing, we did all of the interviews for the book, we're talking to the best of the best. And one of the ones that really kind of shook me to my core, besides the one with Jennifer Green, was with Chad Davis. We'll just to make it, we'll go CD and make it easier as we go through this. CD. And so Chad, I've followed him for years, and he is brilliant person, and great operator as well. Him and his partner. And when I went, hey, so you're talking about the business, you went 60 people, then you went up to 120. I'm like, hey, you're what, no, 160 right now? And he's like, no, we're now down to 60. And I was like, what? And he's like,
sounded like a failure.
Yeah, and right. I was like, and again, let's be clear. Anytime you're going backwards, it's painful for everybody involved. Okay, but And I think he put it really, really clear in his studio. He's like, look, that is not how the company, that's not the purpose. He's like, I wasn't serving the right customers, my clients. I wasn't, we weren't able to manage the employees like we wanted to. We weren't able to provide them what they had signed up for. And so the chasing of the revenue and the chasing of the number of people was not in service to what the business was there for. And when we went back and we looked at our purpose, we wanted to realign the company, and we wanted to drive what was most important, which was the highest profitable firm that we can create, because that is in service of all the people that are involved in this equation. And that, to me, was a fundamental turning point when writing the book, and even when we did the research. And when we dug into that, that's where we really went into the concept of the enterprise value and maximizing enterprise value as aligned to all those things within the book. Because, where your particular business point, where it maximizes there, isn't the same. And it's not always going to be north. It's not always going to be up and to the right on the chart. There's this very Goldilocks zone that the firm owners themselves have to decide as based on what they want the organization to be. And that is a fundamentally different thought and principle around, again, scaling for the purposes of just getting to the largest you can. That is not what this book's about.
No. And there were a couple of people we interviewed that actually stayed at a certain head count or went back down to a head count. And as painful as that is, that can only be done intentionally.
Right.
Yeah, like there's Antonia. I mean, from Ask the Boss, and they went from 8 to 16 in 1 year, and then went back to 8 over the course of the next 2 years. And her statement at the end was, "We make just as much revenue at 16 now at 8, and we have half the amount of cost."
That's crazy.
And we're running a phenomenally more productive and profitable business, and it's a place we love.
Yeah, happier. And that's the thing.
Yeah, and probably CD and Antonia would say, we wouldn't have learned that had we not grown to 120, which is what Chad did to pull back, and that Antonia had grown to 16 and pull back. That effort of unbounded growth, without some intention, taught them exactly who they were, which is the purpose. What's the foundation of the book? Scale with purpose. Don't do it all accidentally. Do it with a purpose. But we're all learning our purpose too. Sometimes we don't know when we found a company. That's a beautiful birthing experience, and it. Sometimes
like I have to feed it now.
I got to feed it, right? And we have so much to learn after that. And people like Chad, Antonia, Jennifer, and so many people we interviewed in the book taught us they were vulnerable, and they taught us what they learned about themselves and about this kind of business. We've experienced it too, and then so the interviews solidified what we knew personally, and the consulting that me and Julie do, and that Ian does with all the people that they serve at Carbon, and so we got to lock it into a book to go, hey, there's a way forward. You can actually be intentional, it turns out. And if you need to pull back your head count now because you've learned a lot from the book, that's not a bad thing. That's actually a sign of you being intentional, which is cool.
And it's a gift to know where enough is enough.
Right.
And where you need to be and where your team needs to be in your company. There's some happiness to be found there.
And start being okay with that. If you hear somebody go, hey, I'm going to buy 5 practices in the next 7 years, you're like, okay, that makes my butt crack sweat, but you go ahead. Nothing bad about that. Just know, use this book. That's a lot of chaos you're going to pump through your company. So there are sometimes you put roles in your company just to manage and dull your chaos.
Right.
We've done that before. So just know what you're getting into. And if somebody says, you know what, I'm good with a lifestyle business, I'm going to stay small, I'm going to work about 20 to 30 hours a week. We've got to start being okay with the intention of what people choose to do. Our book is for people in expansion mode up to that 50-person size. So this is going to help you push and add in that chaos, but start to be intentional and define things with a little bit more data and understanding.
After someone reads this book, and let's say they feel like you've been reading their mail like the whole time. They feel like it's just a personal attack. It could have been. You could have started with "Dear," their name, and then write them. What's the first right step next? What's the next thing to do for them to start seeing some changes in their company?
I think the first thing is go buy a bottle of scotch or a bottle of whiskey or wine, whatever it might be, and go off for a weekend and just reflect.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what, even us as we wrote the book, and I read the book end to end when we got done, I actually had to step back and think about my own business and in terms of take stock and kind of, what are we doing well? But what are the things that I'm just not aware of and I'm missing? And I'll be 100% clear. Like, I wish I could do all the things in the book, and I'm human like everybody else. And there's pieces where I've got blind spots. But I think the first step is to understand where your business is at right now, have perspective on where you believe it should go, and then start to pick the one thing that you're going to change to try to get to what that might be. And it's different for every person that reads the book. It's going to be different. But you've got to make that intentionality to start to change or to have clarity on what the organization is to be. Yeah. And I think most people are like me as an entrepreneur. I'm playing whack-a-mole. I'm running from thing to thing to thing. I'm going to coach a kid's game. I'm jumping into work. I've got distractions. But in that moment that you can step back is where you get that clarity.
Yeah. Yeah, and I would say you have to do something, So, I mean, we do coach people who struggle with the decision they have to make. And in coaching, sometimes we get hard on them. We're like, I don't want to talk about this again in our next coaching session. I mean, you've told me a few times what you need to do. As hard as it is, you have to do something. So I hope this book spurs people. Spurs.
It's like a spur and a burn.
Right. Yeah.
Spurns.
I'll say that again. Yeah. So I hope this book pushes people to make a move, to do something, use the resources, build some structure, put in an accountability chart, start tracking melt for your team. Look at your service lines. Do you have too many service lines for your team size? You may. Pull back your head count. Is it time to dull the chaos with an operational person? Invest in that person. Is it time to replace yourself? Go ahead and do that. Maybe it's not. Well, then you need to work harder. Yep. So figure these things out. There's got to be a move you have to make. And this always works for businesses. You can break it into 30, 60, 90-day even longer time frames. Yeah. Some of those match some of the planning timelines. Timelines are so key into the future and closer to
And just with your consulting, even with your accounting company, measure. Just start to get a foundation. Right. Just see where you're at today. Yeah. Most people don't even have that perspective. And if you measure, then you can start to do some of the rhythms that you talk about later in the book. Yep. Those are things that are actionable right from the start.
Yeah, I love it. Well, this book is incredible. I think it's a really, really good one. Even as just a service-based business founder, seeing you could have been written Dear Will, at the very beginning. So many things where I'm like, oh man, I gotta fix that. So I have my own personal list, and that's my commitment to you because I'm going to start working on that myself. But I think there's a lot of people that can be helped by this. So this was a labor of love. I know that there was a lot of work that you guys had to do that were extra capacity that you had to find in your weeks and in your months and your years to do it. So thanks for taking the time to do this and just taking those years of hard work and distilling it to something that is actionable, not just theoretical. That people like me can actually take and start just helping our businesses thrive and grow.
Yeah, cool. Appreciate that. Thanks for having us, Will.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, and thank you for reading the book.